An alien veteran shares the most terrifying stories of human warfare. The space station hung quietly in the endless black of space. Lights glowed softly along its long corridors, and the hum of engines filled the silence like a distant heartbeat. Travelers from many different planets moved slowly along the wide walkways, some with more than 2 arms, some with skin that shimmered like glass, and some with eyes that seemed to float in their heads. Among them, a crowd was gathering near a large hall, curious whispers filling the air. They were waiting for Salrith, an alien veteran of countless wars, to speak. Salrith was old by alien standards, with faded green skin and deep lines carved across his face. His eyes had seen years of battle, and many in the crowd had come hoping to hear tales of interstellar battles, great starships, and devastating weapons. But Salrith had other plans. As he entered the hall, his tall frame moved slowly, his long fingers tapping lightly against the railing. The crowd fell silent. Some were nervous, others were excited. Salrith did not look like a warrior anymore, and yet there was something in his posture that made the room feel tense. He paused for a moment, looking at the audience, and then began to speak in a voice that was calm but firm. "I have fought in many wars," he said, "and seen things that would make most species shiver, but the most terrifying warriors I ever met were humans." A murmur ran through the crowd. Many aliens had heard rumors about humans. They were known to be strange and reckless, but most assumed these rumors were exaggeration. Humans had only recently begun participating in galactic trade and exploration, and no one expected them to be a serious threat in war. Salrith, however, had a different story to tell. He began with the first time he met humans. It was on a planet called Caldus, a rocky world with jagged mountains and deep red skies. The war there was minor by galactic standards, mostly skirmishes over mining rights and trade routes. Salrith's forces were confident. They had far superior weapons, large battle machines, and soldiers trained for decades. The humans, by contrast, seemed ordinary. There was Jack Morris, a young man barely out of training who carried a standard rifle and a small knife. Beside him was Kate Rogers, steady and quiet, always scanning the terrain. And then Ben Carter, who laughed even when things went wrong, keeping spirits up even under fire. At first, Salrith admitted, the humans were almost laughable. They moved slowly compared to alien soldiers, their equipment was primitive, and they seemed to lack the precision that other species relied on. But in the very first encounter, the humans did something no alien expected. They survived. The first skirmish was simple. Salrith's squad advanced through a narrow canyon, expecting to crush a small human outpost. The humans fired a few rounds, then retreated behind cover. Salrith smiled, thinking it would be easy. He ordered his soldiers forward, but the humans did not just retreat, they adapted. They moved silently along hidden paths, ambushed from above, and suddenly what seemed like a weak, poorly armed group became a deadly force. One of Salrith's drones was destroyed by a simple trap made of rocks and wires, and another was disabled by a thrown device that no alien had seen before. The humans laughed at the danger and kept moving. Salrith realized that their actions were not based on skill or technology, but on something else, something he could not measure or predict. He paused for a moment and looked at the audience. "They were fearless," he said. "Not because they didn't feel fear, but because they ignored it. They chose to act anyway." The crowd leaned in, hanging on his words. Salrith continued. He spoke of how humans worked together in ways that alien species rarely did. When Jack Morris was injured, Kate Rogers did not just help him. She coordinated the team around him, making sure no one else was exposed. Ben Carter ran into fire to save a wounded creature of another species, risking his life without hesitation. The humans seemed to care for each other more than anything else, and that bond made them unpredictable in war. No alien strategy could account for it. Salrith described a moment that haunted him for weeks. His squad had cornered a small human unit on a cliffside. The aliens were sure they would surrender. Instead, the humans formed a line, standing side by side. Jack Morris shouted something in his human language, and the others responded. Then, despite being outnumbered 10-1, they charged. The aliens opened fire, expecting the humans to fall in moments. But they did not. They fought with everything they had, using whatever they could, rocks, knives, even their bare hands. The aliens were forced to retreat. For the first time, Salrith felt fear. He told the audience how the humans did not just fight physically, they fought with their minds. They improvised constantly, turning disadvantages into advantages. When a bridge collapsed under their weight, they found another route, using knowledge of terrain that no alien could calculate. When their weapons jammed, they created new ones from scavenged materials. No system, no machine, no algorithm could predict what they would do next. Humans were chaos but controlled chaos, and it terrified him more than any fleet of warships ever could. He paused again, looking around the hall. "And yet," he said softly, "they are not cruel. They do not kill for pleasure or power or greed. They kill because it is necessary. But even then, they mourn, they remember, they honor their fallen. That is what makes them dangerous. They value life, but they are willing to risk their own to protect others. No strategy, no weapon, nothing in the galaxy can prepare you for that." The audience was silent. Some aliens looked confused. Others looked concerned. A few whispered to each other, unable to fully understand. Salrith smiled faintly. He knew it was hard to grasp. Even he had struggled to understand it at first. He continued with small stories, names, and faces that seemed ordinary. Lily Adams, a medic who stayed behind to treat civilians while the front line advanced. Ryan Hall, who repaired weapons under fire, ignoring his own injuries to keep the humans fighting. Each story was simple, yet it built a picture of humans that no amount of data or reports could ever create. Salrith's voice carried over the hall as he painted scenes of courage, desperation, and determination. Each tale made the aliens realize that humans were not like any other species they had encountered. Then Salrith told them about the first time humans smiled during battle. The aliens expected anger, fear, or desperation. Instead, Jack Morris smiled after narrowly escaping a trap. He laughed quietly, looked at Kate Rogers, and whispered something about how lucky they were. Salrith did not understand it. Why would anyone smile while facing death? But that was humanity. They found light in darkness, hope in hopeless situations, and somehow that made them stronger. He finished part of his story with a quiet statement. "The first time I saw humans fight, I learned that war is not just about strength or weapons. It is about will, and their will, it is unlike anything I have ever seen." As he stepped back from the podium, the audience remained silent, absorbing every word. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had underestimated humans. Others nodded, taking mental notes, but none fully understood. Salrith simply watched them, knowing that what he had shared was only the beginning. He had many more stories to tell, stories that would reveal why humans were considered terrifying in war, not because of what they had, but because of who they were. The hall slowly emptied, but the murmurs continued. The stories lingered, unsettling the crowd in ways they could not explain. Salrith walked away quietly, his mind already on the next tale, knowing that humans had a way of surprising everyone, even the most experienced war veteran. And so began the legend of human warfare in the galaxy, a legend told not by humans themselves, but by an alien who had faced them and lived to tell the story. The red skies of Caldus glowed dimly as the sun dipped behind jagged mountains. Smoke rose from distant explosions, and the ground shook as alien war machines moved across the rocky valleys. Salrith watched from a high ridge, his sharp eyes following the movements of a small human unit trapped in the canyon below. He had faced many enemies in his long life, but these humans were different. Small, seemingly fragile, yet terrifyingly persistent. The human unit had only a handful of soldiers, no more than 10, and they were surrounded by Salrith's forces. Each alien soldier was larger, faster, and armed with weapons far superior to anything the humans carried. Yet somehow, the humans had held their ground for hours, using the terrain, their wits, and sheer determination. Jack Morris crouched behind a jagged rock, checking the small rifle in his hands. His face was dirty, streaked with sweat and ash, but his eyes were sharp and alert. Kate Rogers moved beside him, scanning the canyon for threats, while Ben Carter adjusted a makeshift shield made from scraps of metal. They had been through countless firefights that day, yet they did not show fear. Instead, they planned, they adapted, they moved as one unit. "We need to reach the ridge," Jack whispered, looking at Kate and Ben. "We can't stay here, they'll keep pushing." Kate nodded, her jaw tight. "There's a narrow path along the cliff edge. It's risky, but it's the only way." Ben chuckled softly, even though his left arm was bleeding from a graze. "Risky is what we do best," Salrith observed silently, his long fingers gripping the railing of a nearby ridge. He had studied thousands of species in war, and he had never seen such behavior. Most soldiers would have surrendered by now, yet these humans continued to fight, not because they had no fear, but because they refused to give up. They were not thinking like typical soldiers. They were thinking for each other, for those they protected, and for the mission. The humans began to move. Jack led the way, stepping carefully along the narrow cliff edge. Kate followed, her rifle raised but ready to shield the others. Ben brought up the rear, carrying supplies and watching for ambushes. Alien drones patrolled the area, scanning for movement, but the humans were clever. They stayed in shadows, moved silently, and avoided open spaces. When a drone noticed movement, they used small rocks to distract it, sending it in the wrong direction while they slipped past unnoticed. Salrith's mind raced. How could such small beings outsmart his highly trained forces? He had commanded armies that numbered in the thousands, yet these humans, with barely enough strength to hold their weapons, moved through danger as if guided by instinct. It was not just courage, he realized. It was intelligence combined with loyalty and trust. They trusted each other completely, and that trust made them stronger than any technology. Hours passed as the humans moved along the cliffside. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows over the canyon. They encountered more alien patrols, each larger and more dangerous than the last. One patrol spotted them and opened fire. Bullets and energy beams flew across the rocks. Jack threw himself down, pulling Kate and Ben with him. They rolled behind cover, but one shot struck the cliffside, sending a shower of rocks down the narrow path. Ben groaned, rubbing a sore shoulder. "I told you this was risky." Kate shot him a sharp look but said nothing. She focused on the patrol ahead. Using a discarded alien grenade, she created a small explosion that blinded the patrol for a moment. Jack took the opportunity to fire, hitting a key control panel on an alien mech. Sparks flew, and the machine stumbled, giving the humans a chance to escape further along the path. Salrith's heart raced. His forces were not used to such small units surviving repeated attacks. Most species would have surrendered, retreated, or been destroyed by now. The humans, however, continued, using every obstacle to their advantage. They improvised constantly, making tools, weapons, and defenses from whatever they found. Their minds were always active, always planning, always ready to adapt. As night fell, the humans reached a small cave hidden along the cliff. It was dark and cramped, but it provided cover. They collapsed inside, exhausted but alert. Jack cleaned his weapon while Kate tended to Ben's bleeding arm. Despite their exhaustion, they did not argue or panic. They spoke calmly, planning their next move. "We can't stay here long," Jack said. "They'll find us eventually. We move at first light." Kate nodded. "We make it to the ridge, then we can signal for evacuation." Ben smiled despite the pain. "And if they don't come, we keep moving. We always keep moving." Salrith could not stop watching. The humans' determination was staggering. Even when faced with near-certain death, they never stopped thinking, never stopped planning, never stopped protecting each other. It was a combination of stubbornness, loyalty, and courage that no alien species had ever exhibited in the same way. As the humans rested, Salrith's mind drifted back to his own experiences. He had commanded elite alien soldiers, fought in wars across countless worlds, and faced enemies with deadly technology. Yet he had never seen soldiers who could turn fear into strength in such a way. The humans did not just survive. They thrived in danger, and their presence unsettled him more than any weapon he had ever encountered. At dawn, the humans continued their journey. The cliffside path was even more dangerous in the early light, with loose rocks and sharp drops. A new alien patrol appeared, larger than the previous ones. The humans paused, crouching behind rocks. Jack whispered a plan to Kate and Ben, and they nodded. With careful coordination, they moved silently, drawing the aliens into a trap. Using small explosives and the terrain, they forced the patrol to retreat. One by one, they slipped past, moving steadily toward the ridge. Salrith realized that the humans' courage was not reckless. It was calculated, precise, and guided by trust in each other. They understood risk, and yet they accepted it when necessary. They fought not for glory or conquest, but for survival and for each other. By midday, they reached the ridge. Exhaustion was written on their faces, but their spirits remained unbroken. Jack looked out over the valley below, scanning for alien forces. Kate checked their remaining supplies, while Ben kept watch for any sign of ambush. They had survived countless attacks, navigated dangerous terrain, and outsmarted superior forces, and yet they were not finished. Their determination was stronger than ever. Salrith watched silently, feeling a strange mix of fear and admiration. He had faced many terrifying enemies in his long life, but these humans were different. They were small, fragile, and seemingly ordinary, yet their courage, intelligence, and loyalty made them more dangerous than any army he had ever commanded. He realized that the humans' true strength was not in their weapons or numbers, but in their will to survive and protect each other. He remembered a particular moment when Jack, exhausted and wounded, refused to rest while a fellow soldier struggled. He carried Ben for part of the climb, sharing his own strength without hesitation. Kate, too, had risked herself repeatedly to shield the others. These acts of bravery, small as they seemed, compounded into a force that no alien technology could measure. It was unpredictable, uncalculable, and terrifying. As the sun set behind the ridge, the humans finally reached a safe position. They looked out over the canyon, exhausted but alive. They had survived countless attacks, used their minds to overcome superior forces, and kept each other safe. They had turned fear into action, danger into opportunity, and weakness into strength. Salrith knew that this was only the beginning. Humans fought differently than any other species, and that difference made them a force the galaxy had never truly understood. He took a deep breath and reflected on what he had witnessed. Humans were small, fragile, and seemingly ordinary, yet their courage, intelligence, and loyalty made them extraordinary. They were terrifying, not because of their weapons or numbers, but because they fought with a will that no alien could predict or match. Every decision, every movement, every risk they took was guided by determination, hope, and trust in one another. As night fell, the humans rested on the ridge. Stars glittered above the red mountains, and the quiet hum of distant alien patrols filled the air. Jack, Kate, and Ben sat together, sharing quiet words and making plans for the next day. They were ordinary humans in appearance, yet extraordinary in action. Their courage had defied logic, their determination had overcome overwhelming odds, and their loyalty had created a bond stronger than any weapon. Salrith watched from a distance, knowing that these humans had changed the way he viewed war forever. They were not invincible, but they were relentless. They were not the strongest, but they were clever, brave, and loyal. And most terrifying of all, they would never give up, no matter the cost. The ridge was quiet now, but Salrith's mind raced. He had seen enough to know that the galaxy underestimated humans at its own risk. These humans were not just soldiers. They were survivors, warriors, and protectors. And the story of their courage, their determination, and their loyalty would haunt him forever. He turned away from the ridge and began walking back toward his command post, knowing that he would live with the memory of these humans for the rest of his life. Their bravery had left a mark on him, a reminder that even the smallest, seemingly weakest species could become the most terrifying force in war. And so the legend of human courage in battle grew, not through grand victories or massive armies, but through the simple, relentless acts of survival, loyalty, and bravery that Salrith had witnessed firsthand. These humans, small and ordinary as they seemed, had changed the way he would think about war forever. The quiet of the ridge did not last long. Even as the humans rested, Salrith watched them closely from a distance. He had faced enemies who were bigger, faster, and stronger than any human, but he had learned something new. Humans fought differently. Their power was not in their weapons or size, but in their minds. Jack Morris stretched his aching arms and looked at the canyon below. His eyes were sharp, alert, even though his body screamed for rest. Beside him, Kate Rogers cleaned her weapon carefully, checking every part, every trigger, every mechanism. Ben Carter sat slightly apart, tending to a wound on his arm, but even he was alert, scanning the ridge for danger. Salrith realized something important. The humans' minds never stopped working. Even when tired, even when injured, even when facing impossible odds, they kept thinking, planning, and reacting. They were always aware, always calculating, always ready to act. Their fear did not paralyze them, it fueled them. He remembered one moment from the canyon. An alien drone had detected movement and fired a blast toward the humans. Jack threw himself down, pulling Kate and Ben to cover. The blast hit a rock above them, sending a shower of stones down the slope. Most species would have panicked, but the humans did not. Jack quickly assessed the situation, saw the falling debris, and adjusted their positions. Kate provided cover while Ben threw a small rock to distract another drone. Together, they acted as one unit, adapting instantly to danger. Salrith realized that the humans' greatest weapon was their mind. It was flexible, fast, and unpredictable. No algorithm could calculate their moves, no scanner could predict their next action. They thought, adjusted, and acted instantly. This intelligence, combined with courage, made them terrifying in ways the aliens could not understand. He watched Jack carefully as the sun set behind the mountains. Jack looked at the small fire they had made, then at the horizon. His face was exhausted, but his eyes burned with determination. Kate and Ben mirrored his energy. They were not afraid of death. They understood it, but they refused to let it control them. Their focus was not on fear, but on what they could do. Salrith remembered a story from a past war he had fought in, where an entire army had surrendered when trapped. They had been skilled, disciplined, and strong, yet when fear reached a certain point, they froze. Humans were different. They accepted fear and used it. They allowed it to sharpen their senses, to increase their focus, to make their decisions faster and clearer. This was not instinct alone. It was learning, experience, and willpower all combined. The veteran remembered another moment during the Ridge battle. A small alien patrol ambushed the humans at night. They were caught in a tight canyon with no clear escape. Most species would have panicked, but Jack did not. He shouted instructions, organized a defense, and coordinated counterattacks with precision. Kate moved swiftly, covering gaps in their defense, while Ben provided distractions and covered weak points. Each human acted for the other, not for themselves, not for orders, not for glory. Their motivation was trust, loyalty, and survival together. Salrith realized this was the core of human warfare. It was not weapons or numbers, but bonds. Humans fought for each other, for those they cared about, and sometimes even for strangers. This bond created a force that no alien strategy could defeat. A single human could be weak, but a unit of humans, united by loyalty and purpose, became unstoppable. He thought of a specific incident during the canyon escape. Ben had been injured and could not move quickly. Jack did not leave him behind. He lifted Ben on his back, moving slowly but steadily. Kate covered their rear, firing at approaching enemies and creating diversions. The aliens expected fear, weakness, and hesitation. Instead, they found humans working together, acting as one mind in three bodies. They could not predict the humans' next move because it was guided not by orders, but by loyalty and courage. Salrith noted that human strength was also psychological. They could endure pain, exhaustion, hunger, and fear in ways most species could not. Even when injured, Jack, Kate, and Ben continued to act with purpose. They never allowed despair to control them. They motivated each other with words, laughter, and small gestures. A joke in the middle of battle, a shared glance, a hand on a shoulder, these were not small things. They were reminders that humans fought not alone, but together. He remembered how Jack had smiled once after narrowly escaping a collapsing tunnel. Salrith could not understand it. Most beings would have panicked, cried, or retreated. Jack smiled and whispered to Kate and Ben, "We're lucky, keep moving." It was not ignorance of danger. It was an understanding that fear did not define them. Their courage was active, chosen, and persistent. Salrith realized that humans could turn any situation to their advantage. When trapped, they found escape routes. When wounded, they found ways to keep fighting. When outnumbered, they created distractions, traps, and strategies no one expected. Every action was intentional, every risk calculated, every movement purposeful. The aliens could not predict them because humans did not follow logic alone. They followed a combination of logic, emotion, and loyalty. He reflected on how humans treated their fallen. After a skirmish, they always checked on each other, never leaving anyone behind. Kate helped lift a wounded Jack, even when the path was dangerous. Ben risked himself to pull a fallen civilian from debris. Humans mourned loss, but they did not stop. They learned from it, remembered it, and used it to strengthen their will. No other species he had faced could turn grief into fuel for survival so consistently. Salrith also saw humans' adaptability. They could use anything as a weapon, anything as a shield, and anything as a distraction. A broken piece of metal became a shield. A fallen rock became a trap. A simple flare became a weapon against sensors. They never followed the same pattern twice. Aliens relied on predictability and strategy. Humans relied on creativity, courage, and collaboration. The result was terrifying. He watched the humans rest briefly, sharing quiet words around a small fire. The night was calm, but the danger was real. Distant sounds of alien patrols echoed through the canyon. Jack, Kate, and Ben did not panic. They discussed their plan, checked their equipment, and reassured each other. Even in exhaustion, they maintained clarity of mind. Salrith realized that humans could endure not just physical hardship, but mental strain far beyond other species. Their determination and focus in the face of near-certain death was almost unimaginable. The next day, the humans continued their journey through the canyon, constantly alert. They encountered traps, ambushes, and natural hazards, yet they moved as a single unit. Every action was coordinated, every decision based on trust and knowledge of each other's abilities. Salrith observed silently, understanding that this was more than war. It was a psychological strength unlike anything he had seen. Humans fought not just with their bodies, but with their minds and hearts, and that combination made them terrifying. He thought about Jack giving orders, Kate covering the flanks, and Ben creating diversions. Each person knew their role and adapted as needed. No single leader dictated every move, but their shared understanding allowed them to act as one. Aliens relied on hierarchy and technology. Humans relied on intuition, trust, and choice, and it worked. It worked because humans believed in each other and in themselves more than anything else. Salrith realized that humans' unpredictability was their greatest weapon. No algorithm, scanner, or strategy could anticipate every human decision. They could switch tactics instantly, exploit weaknesses others did not notice, and use danger itself as a tool. Aliens trained for precision. Humans trained for adaptability. Aliens feared power. Humans feared failure but never gave up. This combination was terrifying. He also noted the humans' resilience. They could recover from wounds, exhaustion, and despair faster than most species. Their bodies endured what others could not, but more importantly, their minds endured even greater stress. Jack had been shot, injured, and exhausted, yet he continued to lead. Kate had faced death multiple times without hesitation. Ben had been injured more than once and still risked himself for others. It was not strength alone. It was willpower, courage, and loyalty combined. Salrith understood that humans were terrifying not because they were invincible, but because they refused to be defeated. They accepted pain, fear, and loss, yet continued to act with determination. No enemy could ever fully predict or control them. Humans were a force defined by choice, courage, and collaboration, and that made them dangerous beyond measure. As the sun set on the canyon, Salrith reflected on the lessons he had learned. Humans fought differently. They relied on loyalty, courage, and willpower. They turned fear into action, despair into fuel, and grief into determination. They were unpredictable, adaptive, and relentless. A single human could not change the course of a war, but a group of humans, united by trust and determination, could. And that, he realized, was what made them the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy. He left the ridge that evening, knowing that humans' psychological strength would stay with him forever. They were small, fragile, and seemingly ordinary, yet their minds, hearts, and choices made them extraordinary. No alien technology, no superior numbers, and no experience could fully prepare anyone for the human way of war. It was a combination of courage, loyalty, and mental strength that was terrifying beyond measure. The story of human psychological power spread quietly among alien forces. Those who faced them in battle began to understand a simple truth. Humans fought not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to surrender. They fought for each other, for honor, and for the idea that giving up was worse than dying. That refusal to surrender, combined with intelligence, adaptability, and loyalty, created a force no alien could match. Salrith knew he had barely scratched the surface. He had seen courage, intelligence, and loyalty in small units of humans. He knew that when humans fought on larger scales, their impact could be unimaginable. The galaxy underestimated humans at its own risk, and that risk would haunt every species who faced them. The night fell completely, stars glittering in the red sky. Jack, Kate, and Ben rested briefly, readying themselves for the next move. Salrith looked on, understanding that the humans' power was not in their weapons, not in numbers and not in size, but in their minds, hearts, and choices. They were terrifying not because of what they could do, but because of why they did it. They fought for each other, for survival, and for a sense of honor that no alien could fully understand. And in that moment, Salrith realized that humans were not just warriors. They were legends in the making, terrifying not because of brute force, but because of the strength of their minds and hearts. The battlefield was quiet now, but the memory of it lingered in the smoke-filled air. Salrith stood on a ridge overlooking the valley where the last human skirmish had taken place. The ground was scarred, rocks shattered, and small fires burned in patches across the canyon. Alien forces had retreated, exhausted and unnerved. The humans remained, small figures against the massive landscape, yet their presence carried a power that no technology could measure. Jack Morris sat on a rock, cleaning his weapon, his movements precise despite fatigue. Kate Rogers checked the supplies, counting food, water, and ammunition with quiet determination. Ben Carter tended to a minor injury on his arm, glancing at the horizon as if expecting another attack. Even in exhaustion, they remained alert. Salrith watched, understanding that what he saw was not just survival, but strength of a kind no alien could fully grasp. He remembered the early days of the conflict. When his forces first encountered humans, he had thought them weak, small, poorly armed, and unorganized. Yet he had learned quickly that humans were terrifying in ways far beyond physical strength. Their courage, loyalty, intelligence, and willpower made them unpredictable and deadly. Each battle, each maneuver, each decision reinforced this truth. Aliens could anticipate strategy, calculate force, and predict numbers. Humans could not be predicted. They acted with purpose, guided by loyalty, trust, and a refusal to surrender. Salrith thought about Jack lifting Ben over the cliff, Kate covering their rear, and how each human had instinctively worked together. It was not orders or training alone that made them effective. It was their bond, their commitment to each other, and their refusal to let fear control them. No alien unit, no matter how skilled, could understand or counter such determination. He began to reflect on what these humans had taught him. First, they taught him that fear was not weakness. Humans felt fear, yet they acted despite it. Fear sharpened their senses, focused their minds, and drove them to protect each other. Second, they taught him that loyalty was more powerful than any weapon. A human fighting for a friend or comrade could achieve what armies could not. Third, they showed that intelligence and adaptability were more dangerous than raw strength. Humans could turn almost anything into a weapon, any obstacle into a tool, and any danger into an advantage. Salrith remembered how alien commanders had reacted after witnessing humans in battle. Some had tried to retreat, others had overestimated their strength, and many had underestimated the humans. The humans' refusal to follow predictable patterns, combined with their resilience, had forced changes in alien tactics. Armies that once relied on overwhelming force now faced hesitation. Technology alone could not defeat humans. Experience alone could not predict them. They were unique, and the galaxy had yet to fully understand their danger. He looked down at Jack, Kate, and Ben again. Even in moments of calm, their minds worked constantly. Jack planned, Kate observed, and Ben calculated small risks. Every action, every choice was deliberate. They were not reckless, though they seemed fearless. They were intelligent, brave, and precise. The aliens who faced them had learned the hard way that humans were not to be ignored. Salrith remembered a battle when humans were completely surrounded by alien forces. Escape seemed impossible, yet they did not panic. Jack organized a plan with the limited resources available. Kate created a distraction that drew half the enemy away. Ben exploited terrain to block advancing soldiers. Together, they turned almost certain defeat into survival. Aliens who watched could not comprehend it. Humans were not just soldiers, they were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. He reflected on the lessons humans left for any species that observed them. First, they fought for each other, not for orders. Second, they used every tool, every strategy, and every instinct available to survive. Third, they combined mind, heart, and willpower in ways no alien species could replicate. Salrith realized that humans' greatest weapon was not a gun, a ship, or a machine. It was their spirit. The refusal to surrender, the drive to survive, and the commitment to others made humans extraordinary. As the sun set behind the canyon, the sky glowed with colors that reflected off jagged rocks. Jack, Kate, and Ben sat near a small fire. They spoke quietly, shared food and water, and planned for the journey ahead. They had survived countless attacks, outsmarted superior forces, and endured exhaustion, injury, and fear. Yet their spirits remained unbroken. Salrith understood that this was human strength in its purest form. He remembered the faces of other humans he had seen in war. Lily Adams, a medic who stayed behind to help civilians while the front line moved forward. Ryan Hall, who repaired weapons in the middle of firefights, ignoring his own injuries. Each human acted with courage and loyalty. Even ordinary humans, in extraordinary circumstances, became something terrifying to those who faced them. Salrith also thought about the impact humans left beyond battle. Alien commanders began to change strategies, teaching their soldiers to expect the unexpected when facing humans. Stories of human bravery were used as warnings. Some alien officers avoided conflict with humans when possible. The legend of human courage and determination spread quietly, altering the way war was approached in the galaxy. Humans were no longer just a minor species. They were a force whose mind, heart, and spirit could not be ignored. He watched Jack, Kate, and Ben stand as the night deepened. They moved with caution, scanning the horizon, yet their movements were confident. Exhaustion did not slow them, fear did not stop them, and danger did not deter them. They had endured, adapted, and survived. Aliens who faced them learned to respect not just their courage, but their determination to act, their commitment to each other, and their unwillingness to surrender. Salrith thought about what made humans truly terrifying. It was not violence or strength alone. It was purpose, loyalty, and the refusal to quit. Humans fought for others, for survival, and for principles that went beyond orders or fear. They could turn despair into hope, weakness into strategy, and fear into courage. Their minds and hearts made them unpredictable, and that unpredictability made them dangerous to every species that tried to fight them. He also remembered the smallest moments. Jack laughing quietly after escaping a trap, Kate giving Ben a reassuring glance, a shared word of encouragement. These moments, small as they seemed, created unity. They strengthened the humans' resolve. They reminded him that humans fought for each other, and that bond was stronger than any weapon. No alien army could destroy that bond, and no alien could fully understand it. Salrith walked along the ridge, remembering every human he had encountered. Their names, their faces, their courage, their loyalty. Every story built a picture of a species that was ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in action. The galaxy may have underestimated them, but Salrith would never forget. Humans were terrifying because of who they were, not just because of what they could do. They were small, fragile, and ordinary in appearance, yet their minds, hearts, and choices created a power no alien could defeat. He reflected on how humans changed his own perspective. He had once relied on strategy, technology, and sheer force to win battles. Humans had taught him that courage, loyalty, and willpower could surpass all of these. He realized that every species in the galaxy needed to consider humans differently. They were not just participants in war, they were a force that reshaped how war was understood. As night deepened, the ridge became quiet. Jack, Kate, and Ben sat by the fire, resting, planning, and sharing quiet words. Salrith observed, knowing that they would continue to face danger, yet their determination would never falter. They were ordinary humans, yet extraordinary in every way that mattered. Their courage, intelligence, loyalty, and willpower made them a legend in the galaxy, and their story would inspire awe and fear in equal measure. He thought about the future. Humans would continue to face challenges, conflicts, and enemies far stronger than themselves. Yet he knew they would survive, adapt, and prevail. Their mind, heart, and spirit would guide them. No matter the odds, no matter the danger, humans would fight for each other, for survival, and for the idea that giving up was never an option. Salrith understood the final truth. Humans were not terrifying because they wanted war. They were terrifying because they refused to lose. They fought not for conquest, but for life, for friends, and for principles stronger than fear. Every enemy they faced learned this too late. Humans could not be predicted, controlled, or defeated easily. Their power was in their courage, their loyalty, and their will. He turned away from the ridge, leaving the humans to rest. He would carry the memory of their courage forever. The galaxy would come to know humans as warriors unlike any other, not for weapons, ships, or numbers, but for mind, heart, and determination. Humans were ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in action. They were a force that no alien could fully understand or defeat. And that, Salrith knew, was the most terrifying thing of all. As the stars shone above the red mountains, Salrith walked quietly, reflecting on every battle, every risk, and every human act of bravery he had witnessed. He knew that stories of humans would spread across the galaxy, shaping how others approached war. Yet he also knew that no report, no story, could fully capture the truth. Humans were terrifying because they fought with mind, heart, and will, and they fought for something greater than themselves. And so the legend of human courage, loyalty, and determination was complete. Humans were no longer just a species in the galaxy. They were an idea, a force, and a warning. Salrith would tell their stories again and again, and every time he did, he would remember the fear and respect that humans inspired. They were small, fragile, ordinary in appearance, yet unstoppable in spirit. No alien could understand their full power, and that was why humans were, and would always be, the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy.